In the NBA, popularity translates to success. That's why we see some of the biggest markets constantly winning title after title. So let's take a look at the 5 most popular teams in basketball. The LA Lakers. They've played in 32 NBA Finals with names like Magic, Kobe, Kareem, Shaq, LeBron, and Wilt. No doubt the most iconic team in basketball. After that, Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors surged in the 2010s. The Chicago Bulls dominated with Michael Jordan in the 90s, and the Boston Celtics have won 18 titles. And then there's the New York Knicks. They won their last championship 52 years ago. And look, the New York Knicks are known for a lot of things. Some of the most devoted fans in America, the 4th most total victories in NBA history, and by far the most iconic venue in the world, Madison Square Garden. So how in the world does this happen? A must-see team with nothing to show for in the past 50 years. The richest, most valuable team constantly failing year after year. The only way we can really answer this is by looking into the history of the New York Knicks, to see if they're really cursed. Imagine it's 1946 in New York City. A retired sports writer named Ned Irish is president of Madison Square Garden, a venue mainly used for hockey games. But with the rise of a new sport, Irish decided to expand his arena for basketball. There, he introduced the oldest franchise in the NBA. Names were tallied out of a hat, and the most common name was Knickerbockers, a term that represented the Dutch settlers in New York. Just like that, the blue and orange Knicks were born. Under coach Joe Lapchick, New York had early success. They made history in 1950 by signing the first ever African-American player, Sweetwater Clifton. Him, alongside Hall of Famers Carl Braun, Harry Gallatin, and Dick McGuire, would reach 3 consecutive finals, but lose all of them. But honestly though, nobody really cared about basketball back then anyway. The rest of the 50s was pretty mediocre, with constantly changing coaches and early exits. The most iconic thing they did was in 1962, when they, let Wilt Chamberlain score 100 points. Just normal stuff. But despite the rough decade, the Knicks were about to experience their best basketball yet. In 1964, the Knicks took a turn after drafting Willis Reed number 8 overall. Willis Reed was a tough center who was physical under the rim. He was known for his strength and defense, which helped him win Rookie of the Year. Add a top 10 coach of all time with Red Holzman, and some other key pieces, and next thing you know, you're a championship contender. At the point guard is Walt Clyde Frazier, a versatile playmaker that dominated on offense and defense. Frazier scored over 14,000 points, and currently leads the Knicks in total assists. At shooting guard was Earl the Pearl Monroe, known for his twisting, spinning, and shake-and-bake maneuvers. His unique style made Monroe the flashy player in New York. Along with them was Dave DeBusschere, a physical defender, Jerry Lucas, an accurate shooter, Bill Bradley, a Princeton alum, Dick Barnett, a strange jump shooter, and of course, Willis Reed, the big man who won the 1970 MVP. Every year, the Knicks inched further and further into the postseason until the 70s. New York started off the decade with a franchise-best 60 wins, facing the Lakers in the NBA Finals. With the series tied at 2 apiece, the Knicks would be tested in Game 5 after Willis Reed came down with a torn muscle in his leg. Despite their best player being out, New York rallied down 16 to beat the Lakers. And although getting blown out in Game 6 may have seemed deflating, this loss set up one of the most famous moments in NBA history.
I think we see Willis coming out. Here comes Willis. And the crowd is going wild. That to Reed on the forecourt. Right side from 20. Jumps. Yes! Willis has hit on his first 2. He bullets one down. North of his intercepted by the Busher. Fast break for the next one. Dribble drive. Leads Reed driving shot. Is good. The New York Knickerbockers have won the 1969-70 World Championship of Basketball.
In In Game 7, Willis Reed limped his way onto the court and scored the first 2 buckets. Then he went scoreless the rest of the game. But look, even though Reed wasn't a superstar, his presence alone on the court thrilled the New York crowd and helped his teammates dominate Game 7. On their home floor, the New York Knicks won their first NBA championship 113-99. Fittingly, Willis Reed was named Finals MVP. The biggest achievement in basketball was now completed in New York, but they were still hungry for some more. A couple years later, the Knicks fell to the Lakers in the finals, but they rematched for the third and final time in '73. In 5 close competitive games, the Knicks won their second title. You know what? Why not go for 3? Fine, that third ring can always be won next year.
And to all the people who possibly made it possible for me to stand here tonight, I'd like to say thank you.
Willis Reed? Retired? Despite playing just 10 seasons, his persistent knee injuries were starting to get to him. He had already gone through numerous surgeries, and he wasn't ready for another long recovery process. Just like that, with their best player gone, New York's glory days seemed behind them. Without Reed, New York ended 1974 with a losing record for the first time in 8 seasons. A few years later, Willis decides to stir up some excitement in New York. He's coming back as a coach. I mean, this guy is practically a legend here. He can come by anytime to replace our winningest coach. Let's see how he did. You know what? Never mind. Get Red back in here. So Willis Reed was now fired from his beloved Knicks, where he lasted 1 season and 14 games. Turns out the renowned Coach Holzman didn't seem to do much better, finishing with their worst record in 13 years. Come the 80s, New York's entire championship roster is completely gone, either retired or on a new team. To put the nail in the coffin, Red Holzman is now retired, ending his career as not just the greatest coach on the Knicks, but one of the best in the NBA. But Holzman's legacy will live through one of his players, Phil Jackson. Jackson would go on to coach the Bulls and Lakers to 11 combined championships, stating that Holzman was a significant reason for his success. So yeah, great story, but what we really care about is New York. Right now, Knicks fans are pretty fed up with their mediocrity, so 1983 introduced them to a great scorer named Bernard King, who helped them win a playoff series against the Pistons. However, New York fell to their rival Celtics in Game 7 to send them packing, disappointed yet again. Bernard King would be ridden with injuries his remaining years, as the Knicks became one of the worst teams in the league. Sure, the Knicks went through some rough years, but that's just normal. Every team in the NBA goes through it. Believe it or not though, the Knicks are yet to even begin their curse. That would wait till May 12th of 1985. You see, coming into the offseason, the Knicks are off to a horrible 24-win season, which is bad for NBA ratings. New York is the biggest market in the league, and they therefore gotta do good if the league wants extra revenue. And coming out of the draft this year just happens to be a generational talent, Patrick Ewing. Ewing was a powerful big man out of Georgetown, standing 7 feet tall with great scoring, shot blocking, and rebounding. Just the sort of guy that would popularize New York basketball. David Stern, commissioner of the NBA, just happens to be characterized by many as crooked and controversial. Oh, and by the way, he was raised in New York. Normally, the first pick would have been decided by a coin flip between the 2 worst teams, but this year just had to be different. 1985 introduced a lottery system where the 7 worst teams would have an equal chance of being drawn from an envelope, an event televised live from CBS.
The second pick in the 1985 NBA draft goes to the Indiana Pacers.
The fact that the biggest market got the best player raised a lot of theories. One was that the envelope was frozen before the event. Another was that it was creased on its edges. Either way, the Knicks just received their most talented player of all time, and a curse alongside it. The Ewing curse, a theory popularized by sports writer Bill Simmons, said that teams tend to struggle when they have star players with lots of media attention. But Ewing wasn't struggling at all, at least in the 80s. The big man dominated with 20 points per game to win Rookie of the Year in ewing. A few years later, the Knicks hired a successful college coach named Rick Pitino and drafted another Rookie of the Year in Mark Jackson. With Ewing dominating the rim and Jackson dishing out assists, the Knicks added another weapon, a physical defender named Charles Oakley. Just like that, New York basketball was back to work. So let's see how they did. 1989. The Knicks reached the Eastern Conference semis, but lost in 6 games to the Chicago Bulls. But that's fine though, even though Chicago's got this young guy named Michael Jordan, they're definitely not gonna have to see these guys again. That offseason, Coach Pitino unexpectedly went back to college basketball, but that didn't seem to stop the Knicks' momentum. In 1990, down 2-0 to the Celtics, New York won the next 3 to stun their rivals.
2 minutes plus away from being a race finally. Here's Oakley. Really threw it away. 1 second. Ewing. In the corner. And you gotta know something when that happens. That's an omen. Patrick Ewing goes out for the New York Knicks with 31 points, 8 rebounds, 10 assists.
Unfortunately, the Knicks would lose the next round to the Detroit Pistons. 1991. A bit of an off year, but New York still has a chance to make a run. Or just get swept by Jordan. Okay, well it's pretty clear that the coaching room has been a mess ever since Rick Pitino left. Now would be the perfect time to recruit a head coach. Because New York needs the best of the best, that somebody also has to be, you know, one of the most iconic coaches of all time. The Knicks reached out to Pat Riley to see if he was interested in returning to coaching. Riley accepted and brought his tough, defense-oriented coaching style to New York. All of a sudden, Patrick Ewing and the Knicks were title threats. In the 92 semis, the Knicks rematched the heavily favored Bulls, and even forced a Game 7, but fell on the road yet again. Angered from losing to Chicago for the 3rd time, New York stormed into 93 with aggression. They traded Mark Jackson for key role players, one of them being Charles Smith, a name to remember. And after winning a franchise-best 60 games, and were now 1 series away from the NBA Finals. The team standing in their way? The Chicago Bulls. The Knicks set the tone in the first 2 games, with a John Starks posterizer lighting up MSG. Then, the Bulls snatched the next 2 games in Chicago, meaning Game 5 was crucial for New York. On their home floor, New York found themselves down by 1 point late in the game.
Ewing out to set a pick. Here's Starks, changed his mind. Plenty of time on the shot clock, down to 10. Ewing for Smith. Smith. Stop. Smith again. What a play by Scottie Pippen. Final seconds. Jordan for Armstrong. And the Bulls have defeated the Knicks. The Chicago Bulls with a couple of spectacular plays. Scottie Pippen stopping Charles Smith, and the Bulls win it. That last basket will count. The Bulls 97, the Knicks 94.
Let's break this down. Starks dumps the ball to Ewing, who is being guarded pretty well. But, you know, with the game on the line, this play is drawn for Ewing. Ewing drops his shoulder into the defender, but starts to lose his footing. Before he trips, he gives the ball to the only player available, Charles Smith. Charles Smith is a 6'10", 245-pound power forward, someone who is a pretty big presence in the paint. Sure, Smith is more of a team player than a standout star, but he's just 4 feet from the basket with a chance to take a commanding 3-2 lead over maybe the greatest NBA team ever. He just needs a layup. Whatever you do, don't get blocked. Better yet, don't get blocked 4 consecutive times. 4. Next thing you know, time expires and the series is essentially over. After one of the worst sequences you'll ever see, Charles Smith became the scapegoat in New York. 1994. Another solid year by Ewing, Pat Riley, and the Knicks, which sent them to the semis, again facing the Bulls. But this year was different. Since Michael Jordan took a hiatus to suck at baseball, New York took advantage by getting up 2-0. The Bulls answered back in a wild Game 3, which featured fights in front of the commissioner, a 19-point comeback, and a Patrick Ewing hook shot to take the lead. But that was ruined when Tony Kukoc hit the game winner for Chicago. However, the Knicks also got some luck of their own. In Game 5, a very questionable foul was called on Scottie Pippen, which helped New York win the game and soon the series. Even though there was no Jordan, the Knicks had finally gotten over that hump. The next opponent was Reggie Miller and the Pacers. This series is known for when superfan Spike Lee decided to beef with Reggie Miller from the sideline. That trash talk helped fuel Miller to torch New York and get up 3-2. But in Game 7, Patrick Ewing put up one of the best performances of his career, scoring the clutch buckets to win the series. Finally, the New York Knicks celebrated on their home court as they reached their first finals since 1973.
The New York Knicks headed to the NBA Finals to go up against the Houston Rockets.
The 1994 Finals, Houston vs. New York, Hakeem Olajuwon vs. Patrick Ewing. This 7-game series was low scoring and physical, with not a single team scoring 100 points in any of the games. But in Game 6, the Knicks were looking to knock off Houston with a 3.
6-10 seconds to go. Rockets lead by 2, and here is Stark.
Look from 3, it's tipped, and it's knocked away, and the Rockets win! The ball was tipped. It was partially blocked. And Elijah with the big tip.
The result of winning a championship or not would be determined by one man. The same man that missed the 3-pointer in Game 6. John Starks was a key contributor for New York in '94. He had a phenomenal regular season with over 200 made threes, but when they needed him most, Starks let them down. In Game 7 of the NBA Finals, Starks had the worst game of his career. 2 for 18 from the field, 1 for 10 in the fourth quarter. While the Knicks had plenty of good shooters on the bench, Pat Riley refused to sub out Starks, and New York ultimately lost 90-84. This game would be the closest the Knicks would ever get to winning another title. 1995. The Knicks are rolling through the playoffs, but now have to face the Indiana Pacers. This should be easy. I mean, New York beat them last year, so all they gotta do is make a statement in Game 1.
See, that is short of the record for both teams in a playoff game. Miller for 3, and he got it. Reggie Miller with a clutch tray, and it's 105-102. And a steal. Miller retreats to the three-point line and hits again.
Tie game. A make is okay for the Pacers.
Starks misses. Batted around. Ewing has it. His shot, no good. Reggie Miller the rebound and a foul with 7.5 seconds. Anthony stumbles and falls. Time runs out. Reggie Miller scoring 8 points in the final 32 seconds. Taunting Spike Lee and 19,000 at Madison Square Garden.
The tone was set alright. Reggie Miller scored 8 points in 9 seconds to stun the Knicks. Patrick Ewing would have to fight to keep the Knicks in the series, even hitting a game winner in Game 5. However, when it mattered most, Ewing's last-second finger roll in Game 7 came up short.
Starks cuts to the corner, inbounds to Ewing, down to 3, down to 2, Ewing! It's all over. The Indiana Pacers have defeated the New York Knicks 97-95 to take the series.
A day later, Coach Pat Riley resigned and was replaced by Don Nelson. This move definitely messed up the team for '96. Don Nelson's coaching style contrasted with the Knicks' defensive mindset, and he was fired after 59 games. Jeff Van Gundy took over, where they lost in 5 games to, surprise, the Chicago Bulls. 1997 added some key contributors in Allen Houston and Larry Johnson to the team. And in the playoffs, New York met a familiar face. Pat Riley, now coaching the Miami Heat. Early in the series, Patrick Ewing was balling out. A dunk over Alonzo Mourning, blocking a game-tying shot, and then getting up 3-1. Look, this series is all but over. Let's just make sure nothing catastrophic happens.
And now they have to fight for this series.
P.J. Brown throws Charlie Ward. Watch out. This one's going to get really ugly. P.J. Brown tricked Charlie Ward up and threw him into the photographer's row.
Believe it or not, this brawl by PJ Brown and Charlie Ward completely flipped the momentum in the series. In the NBA, there's a rule that a bench player cannot leave the sideline during a fight. Turns out, some of the Knicks did. Patrick Ewing, Allen Houston, Larry Johnson, and John Starks, their 4 best players, were suspended, and New York lost the series in 7 games. Just like that, the super talented Knicks, who were good enough to beat Michael Jordan, now just blew a 3-1 lead, just because of a brawl. 1998, the Knicks faced Miami in another chippy series, with a fight between Alonzo Mourning and Larry Johnson. Although the Knicks would win the series in 5, their season ended to Reggie Miller and the Pacers. 1999, in a shortened season, the Knicks barely squeaked into the playoffs as the 8th seed, and were heavy underdogs to the Miami Heat. New York surprisingly forced to win or go home, but there was no way they could beat the 1 seed.
Van Gundy calls a play a triangle. That usually means something for Ewing. Out in Houston.
Houston ducks under. Got it! With 8/10 left. And the New York Knicks have become the second team in NBA history to knock off a number 1.
This moment propelled an insane Cinderella run that finally brought hope to New York. The Knicks stormed past Atlanta and Indiana to become the first 8th seed in the NBA Finals. But despite Patrick Ewing being out for the series with an Achilles injury, New York gave it all they had. Sadly, they lost in 5 games to the Spurs. And with an aging roster and desperate fans, 2000 was the last dance for New York. This postseason, the Knicks had to settle some rivalries. First, they faced Pat Riley and the Heat, the 4th time they've met in the 90s. Then they faced their other rivals, the Indiana Pacers, for the 6th and final time. In a physical 6-game series, Reggie Miller prevailed and sent Indiana to their first finals in NBA history. On the other side were the New York Knicks, a team with an incredible roster, coaching staff, and face of the franchise in Patrick Ewing. New York had numerous opportunities to win that title they longed so badly. I mean, at one point they were even 1 game away from winning the finals. But with Michael Jordan, Reggie Miller, and numerous mishaps, the 90s Knicks remained ringless. After the playoff loss, Ewing, hampered by injuries, requested a trade. Ask any Knicks fan and they'll agree that Patrick Ewing is the best Knick of all time. He is their leading scorer with 23,000 points, with the most rebounds, minutes, and a jersey that is now retired in New York. With Ewing's departure, New York's successful era came to an end. In 2001, Coach Van Gundy unexpectedly retired mid-season after, quote, losing focus to properly coach. That year, the Knicks missed the playoffs for the first time since 1987, 14 years later. In a desperation move, the Knicks traded for Antonio McDyess, who only played 18 games. In return, they lost a Defensive Player of the Year, veteran point guard, and 7th overall pick. Want to make things worse? How about we replace the team president with Isaiah Thomas? Yes, in 2003, the legendary Isaiah Thomas, a top 50 player of all time, randomly decided to rescue New York. First, he hires Hall of Famer Lenny Wilkens to coach. He resigned after less than a year. Then, Hall of Famer Larry Brown takes the role. He got fired after a year. Well, let's hope that the draft room is better. In 2003, the Knicks took Mike Sweetney with the 9th pick. He turned into this. 2 years later, Sweetney was traded for Eddie Curry, a big man who got sued for harassing a limo driver, however that works. Doesn't matter, cause Isaiah Thomas thought this guy would look great in a Knicks uniform. New York gave up a first-round pick, 3 veteran players, $60 million, and some future picks that turned into LaMarcus Aldridge and Joakim Noah to land Curry. Overall, Eddie Curry had just 3 productive seasons, but in his final 2 years, he was so bad that he played a total of 74 minutes. Turns out he also struggled with weight issues. You know, while we're at it, let's just mention another chubster Isaiah Thomas signed. Jerome James was literally nicknamed Big Snacks, and in his final 2 years in New York, James played 4 games and earned $12 million. On top of the millions of dollars wasted, the star of the Knicks, Stephon Marbury, basically just fought with the entire front office until he quit the team. So basically, New York had the league's highest payroll during Isaiah's 5 years in charge, but made the playoffs just once. All Isaiah Thomas brought New York was terrible decisions, a harassment charge, and a record-breaking payroll. By 2007, Fire Isaiah chants became a common occurrence at Knicks games, which was capped off by an embarrassing 104-59 loss to Boston. Finally, in 2008, Isaiah Thomas was fired. And with the root of the problem gone, the only place you could go is up. In the 2009 draft, New York selected Jordan Hill 8th overall. At the time, New York needed some guards. Instead, they took a 6'11 player that just lasted 24 games. But that's fine, they only missed out on DeMar DeRozan and Drew Holiday. After the draft blunder, New York could have potentially landed LeBron, D. Wade, and Chris Bosh. You see, in 2010, New York was LeBron's top choice in free agency. But after a poor meeting with the Knicks, LeBron James went to Miami and won 2 chips. Instead, the Knicks settled for Amari Stoudemire, a respected center from Phoenix. Stat was given the richest contract in New York history, $100 million for 5 years. In those 5 years, Amari was constantly injured with the occasional glass punching in the playoffs. Along with Stoudemire came Carmelo Anthony, one of the best scorers in the game. Over the next few years, Carmelo, Stoudemire, and fan favorite Jeremy Lin would stir up excitement in the Big Apple, but no major playoff success would result from it. Andrea Bargnani was a lazy player with a big contract, and Phil Jackson made poor decisions as team president. The Zen mastermind would make mistakes like signing a wash-up Joakim Noah for $72 million, selecting Frank Ntilikina over Donovan Mitchell, and calling Carmelo Anthony a loser. All of this mismanagement really started to frustrate Knicks fans. Speaking of the fans, team owner James Dolan isn't making his relationship with them much better. I mean, in 2017, Charles Oakley, a legendary Knicks player, was handcuffed and detained at a home game. Even superfans like Spike Lee, who has been attending Knicks games for over 30 years, complained about Dolan harassing him. While Knicks fans should be focusing on winning titles, now they are questioning if they should even attend games at MSG. By 2018, the Knicks hit rock bottom, with a record of 17-65. But thankfully, after putting up the worst record in franchise history, the only place you could go is up. In 2020, Tom Thibodeau was announced head coach and made an immediate impact. Thibodeau won Coach of the Year, Julius Randle won Most Improved Player, and the Knicks were back in the playoffs. Unfortunately, that's where they met their new villain, Trae Young of the Hawks, who basically just taunted Knicks fans.
Standing ovation, because this does not diminish as Young knocks down the 3. This does not diminish this season.
Young takes the bow after that. Takes the bow for his offensive prowess.
In 2022, New York snatched Jalen Brunson, a 6'2" point guard with a similar style to Allen Iverson. Although the next 2 seasons would end in disappointment, New York added some more weapons in Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges. Which brings us to now. The New York Knicks are currently having their most promising playoff run in decades, beating Detroit and then stunning Boston to reach the conference finals. There, they meet a familiar rival, Indiana, the same team that knocked them out last year in Game 7. With a shot at the NBA Finals, here's what happened.
With Brunson, another 3 by Neesmith.
He'll roll and he'll find the defensive part. Neesmith 3, good! Got it! Neesmith again, 3, got it! Neesmith, it's a 3, it's a 2-point game! 15-point lead for the Knicks, 119-105. And a missed free. 2-point game. Indiana with it. Halliburton. He'll take it. He'll backpedal a 3 for the win. And he got it!
Ever since 1973, 52 teams have been crowned NBA champions. Yet, for some reason, the Knicks are not on that list. A majority of the problem is poor team management, but that still doesn't explain all of the bad fortune during the 1990s. Some fans just blame the misfortune on the Ewing curse, when David Stern rigged the '85 draft. But no matter how good or bad the team is, Madison Square Garden is always sold out. From every preseason to regular season to playoff game, the fans always show up, which is really what makes the Knicks so special. The day will soon come that they win an NBA title, but for now, the New York Knicks can only be described as cursed.